Hello, this is George from George's Music Blog, and today I'm talking about the new album from Squarepusher, Kammerkonzert. Well, I didn't expect to be talking about a new Squarepusher album right now. That sort of implies there are some albums which I do expect to be talking about, which isn't exactly the case, but it's fair to say some are more anticipated than others, such as a well-known Scottish electronic music duo I could mention. Following this week's announcement, I'm sure I'll be talking about Boards of Canada again soon. For now, I do think it's kind of odd that Warp chose to launch this massive coordinated hype campaign for the new album literally the week that a new Squarepusher album dropped. I know they're very different artists, but they're both absolute Warp mainstays, and there's surely a huge overlap in the fan base. You only have to see all the people going to posts about Squarepusher and just chatting about Boards of Canada underneath. Anyway, whatever. That is not any concern of mine, so for today, let's talk about Kammerkonzert. And we'll begin with some facts. Tom Jenkinson, aka Squarepusher, has been releasing music since the mid-1990s, and this is his 16th album, depends which ones you include, under his principal recording alias, following 2024's Dostrotime. Unlike that record, which tied together several themes and styles that had been present in his music since at least 2012, I'd say, Kammerkonzert feels like a completely new angle for Squarepusher. The press photo of Tom sitting in an auditorium wearing a loosely knotted neck scarf and a wry facial expression, along with the album's German translation, Chamber Concert, do provide some clues. We shouldn't be expecting any micro-edited breakbeat or digitally reincarnated 303 acid lines here. Instead, we've got Squarepusher plays chamber music, a style of music traditionally played in the chambers of great palaces by small groups of musicians reacting to one another to create a fluid and dynamic musical dialogue. Okay, so I'll just summarize the record, then give my immediate thoughts on it, and then we'll get into the meat of it. Now, it's not quite the case that Squarepusher has gone completely analog here. As far as I'm aware, for his landmark jazz fusion record, Music is Rotted One Note, check out the description for my video on that, which was probably the first time he surprised everyone by taking a really significant left turn. He eschewed sequences and any kind of digital programming whatsoever. But unlike Rotted, Kammerkonzert does feature some program drumming on K2 Central and some process breakbeats on K4 Berlins. And aesthetically, I'd say these pieces are of a closer feel to the atmosphere of much of Ultra Visitor, some of Hello Everything, i.e. essentially acoustic with the adornment of electronic elements. But those tracks, Central and Fairlands, are the exception. And as an overall listening experience, Kammerkonzert does play like a collection of organically played live performances. However, from what I've read, it is the work of Jenkinson alone, and the only instruments he plays are the bass and drums, with everything else being MIDI triggered. Having said that, the track K4 Fairlands has previously appeared as Extaca 1, credited to the Attica Quartet, featuring Squarepusher in 2021. So that version is surely played live, and I've linked the video for that below. Anyway, the article referencing the MIDI setup is also linked below as well, so by all means check that out and let me know if you believe otherwise. Surely he could be playing some of the other instruments, at least the keyboards and guitars. It'll be interesting to see if he gives any interviews that shed light on the process. Likewise, if you have any insight, then please let me know in the comments. So the vibe here ranges from moody and somber to slick and funky, jazzy obviously, to nerve-shreddingly tense, all of which is par for the course for the Pusher. But it's the compositional style that is probably the biggest departure. In any conversation online I've seen about these tracks, it is never too long before the name Frank Zappa comes up. Now, I don't listen to Frank Zappa, I'm not familiar with his music, I've probably heard a handful of tracks, and to be honest, I don't think it's for me. So I'm not going to comment on that too much further. If you like Frank Zappa and you've heard this record, then surely you've noticed the influence, as it seems everybody has. If you're a Zappa fan and you've not heard it, then by all accounts, it sounds like it would be right up your street. There are jazz elements too, but not in the loose, funky, Miles Davis jazz fusion type jazz of Music is Rotted One Note. This is dense, knotty, complex. I mean, it's probably fair to say in many places it's complex for the sake of being complex. There's surely not much improvisation going on here. This feels like heavily formalized, intricate playing. Music for musicians to show off how skilled they are. To be honest, I am not really into jazz either, and wouldn't count myself as remotely knowledgeable about it. You're probably wondering, why the hell has this guy made so many videos about Squarepusher? Hey, I came for the breakbeats and the 303s, and I stayed for the moments of deep profundity. Anyway, I'm not going to delve into the musicality of the jazz elements or the different strands of it that are coming through. Suffice to say, it is definitely noodly. The third main influence, along with Zappa and jazz, that comes through strongly, and I do want to mention, is film soundtracks, or movie soundtracks, as some people call them. Now, soundtrack to an imaginary film is a metaphor that gets stuck onto albums, especially electronic or instrumental albums. So often it can feel kind of meaningless, but here it is definitely relevant, as the music on Kammerkonzert has a very strong soundtrack feel. All the pieces are so linear in terms of structure. Yeah, there's repeating refrains and motifs, but everything is executed in the manner of a narrative which the mind irresistibly wants to interpret as an unfolding chain of events. So we've got chase scenes, fight scenes, moody city at nighttime scenes. In terms of the film itself, I'm thinking maybe a black and white heist flick featuring a giant robot possessed by the spirit of Frank Zappa. But anyway, let me know your suggestions in the comments. Okay, so my initial take. What I think is most impressive about Kammerkonzert is the fact that Tom Jenkinson has managed to reveal an entirely new aspect to his sound. Obviously that's kind of his thing. He's always innovating, exploring and experimenting. Not always to the same extent, sure. Be Up a Hello made no secret of the fact that it was returning to old school gear and an old school sound, but generally he's always pushed things forward while still sounding unmistakably like Squarepusher and no one else. His previous album, Dostrotime, for example, tied together themes and aesthetics that had been present in his music for several years, I'd say. Sure, there were some new elements, some of the kind of proggy space opera guitar parts on tracks like Holoform, but generally speaking, Dostrotime was a refinement of his sound. Kammerkonzert is a full reinvention. The most comprehensive, arguably, since Music Has Rotted One Note, and definitely the most unusual Squarepusher album since Just a Souvenir. And there's no denying it's a deeply impressive record. However he recorded them, some of the arrangements here are insane, even if they can be overwhelming to listen to at times. I mean, a track like Wenderlin can be overwhelming to listen to as well, so maybe it just comes down to taste. But to pull off something as radical as Kammerkonzert at this stage in his career, and to do it so convincingly, fully jumping in with both feet, is just an incredible achievement, really. I'm also pleased to say that the production and mastering doesn't suffer from the same deficits as Just a Souvenir, which is probably the closest comparison in terms of overall sound. That record was plagued by a horribly kind of thin sound, especially the drums, but some of the other elements as well. Okay, now I've already talked at length, so I'm not going to go deep on loads of the tracks, but let's get into some of the detail. Now, dropping K2 Central as the kind of teaser track was probably a canny choice, as it's the most typically kind of Squarepusher sounding cut here, leading with funky bass guitar, embellished with tasteful drum machines, live flourishes of percussion and acoustic instrumentation. It builds to the kind of layered climax that Jenkinson has been deploying to devastating effect for years, and provides the intro for our movie's urbane protagonist, perhaps wearing a loosely knotted scarf and a wry facial expression. It could easily be a track from Hello Everything, with that tasteful synthesis of live instruments and electronic flourishes. But things head pretty sharply into left field from here on in. Continuing the movie soundtrack conceit, K3 Diligence signals a grumbling misanthropic character entering stage left, with their theme being the low, rumbling parping of some kind of wind instrument. I think it's a tuba, maybe. But K4 Fairlands is where the action really kicks off. To my recollection, the record's only inclusion of edited breakbeats, which give chase to uneasy strings that rise in intensity. Surely a high-stakes chase scene, if ever there was one, with jittery pizzicato plucks marking every footfall along the cliff edge. This could also easily be a track from Venentian Snares' Ross Silag album, the Hungarian one, and it is no stretch to imagine this soundtracking Tom and Jerry locked in a never-ending game of cat and mouse. There was even a fan video years ago to Seren Seltzen, sorry, don't know how to pronounce that, which had spliced footage of Tom and Jerry doing exactly that. After a moody midsection, K7 Museum opens Act 2 in more jaunty fashion. There's really no way to feature a harpsichord without it summoning up images of men in powdered wigs, tights and frilly brocade. So yeah, we're fully in the late Baroque period here, but with Frank Zappa playing the character of Bach. But swap out the harpsichord for a 303, the jazz drumming for a breakbeat, and this could be a classic Squarepusher acid jam, reimagined for the 18th century. All good fun stuff if you're willing to suspend disbelief for a little while, but it's the final portion of the record from K10 Terminus to K13 Vigilant which provides the jeopardy-defying climax to our fictional movie, and is the section which I find to be the most challenging. On a graph plotting technical brilliance against the next axis of enjoyable to listen to, this is perhaps the lowest point of the curve, and it is this extremity of the record that will probably put me off overly frequent listening. So with that in mind, let's round up with some final reflections. I find it impossible not to admire the ambition of the Kammerkonzert project. So many of these compositions are just insane, really, not just in the detail, but that they work and it all coheres as an hour-long listening experience. And just for how far out of Squarepusher's comfort zone it is. For such a bold artist to have found such new territory to push into is pretty amazing. I don't want to get into this artist versus that artist showdown, but it's hard to imagine Aphex putting out something so radical at this point. Be great if he did. But, I can't deny it, this is not my favourite Squarepusher sound. I much prefer him in electronic, breakbeat mangling, deconstructed junglist mode, and I definitely would not be able to get into Kammerkonzert if it weren't a Squarepusher album. Because it is, I've listened to it probably 15 or 20 times in the last few weeks, and doing so has deeply enamoured me to the record. But I won't be exploring Zappa discography or getting into chamber music, noodly jazz, or any of the other influences I've seen mentioned. The French band, I believe, Magma, Gentle Giant, etc. It is definitely in the same box for me as Music is Rotted One Note, which I respect, but cannot get much enjoyment from. And Just a Souvenir, which I think was a brave choice of a record, but badly executed, and possibly Tom's only real misstep. Kammerkonzert is better than either of those. Anyway, I would love to hear your thoughts. Please let me know in the comments. Please give us a like if you're still watching at this point. And oh yeah, did you hear? Boards of Canada have got a new album coming out soon. That's exciting. Okay, that's it from me. Thanks so much for watching. Goodbye.